ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति. Namaskar, my dear friends. To continue to talk about the book Updesa, Saram or Updesa Undiyar of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi. In this video, the right attitude about the karma is to be explained as told by Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi. What then should our attitude be towards karma or activity? Should we or can we refrain from all action? No. Persons are always acting and impelled to act in particular ways. Their body and mind alike are bundles of vasanas, resulting from the operation of well-established laws in respect of innumerable past acts and appearing to bind the individual with iron chains. There is no need, however, for any pessimistic collapse into sluggishness. In each bundle we find intertwined not merely the operation of laws which man cannot control, but also elements of freedom which can use those laws to reshape and rearrange the bundle. The law of karma, for instance, that like produces like, and that individual acts tend to become habits growing stronger with exercise, is not a law to fear. It is a neutral law. If acts performed with the desire for worldly objects develop such desire endlessly, so do acts performed without such desire develop desirelessness, vairagya, and so do acts performed with love of God and in a spirit of surrender to Him develop such love and spirit. Sanskaras are the seed forms or potentialities arising from action which after due time begin to germinate as desires, tendencies, aptitudes, etc. The term vasana is generally used as synonymous with sanskaras. Bhagavad Gita, where we find both sets, presented samples of which are given here. These referring to the binding effect of karma. Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 verse 5. Nehi kaschit takshanamapi jatu tishtat karam kritah karyate harvashah karma sarvah prakirtirjar gune. That is, hence, to avoid the ever-lengthening chain of births and deaths, samsara, or the ocean of desire-born karmic results with its perpetual waves of pain and pleasure. None is inactive even for a moment. All are moved to act involuntarily or by their innate, ingrained and natural qualities or tendencies. Now, Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 verse 33. Sadrishyam chestate savasyaha prakirtirjanarvanapi prakirtim janti bhutani nigraha kim krishyati. That is, even the learned act in accordance with, that is, under pressure of their natural and inborn tendencies. All creatures follow their nature. What can mere interdiction do? Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 59. यद अहंकारम आश्रित है न योतिस्य इति मन्यसे मिथ्येस व्यवसायस्ते प्रकृतिस्त्वाम नियोक्ष्यति. That is, if yielding to your ego of the present moment you think that you will not engage in battle, you are mistaken. Your nature, that is the accumulated vasanas of the past, will force you into battle. These referring to the elements of freedom. Bhagavad Gita chapter 6 verse 5. Udharetasmanastvamanam. Let one raise oneself. Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 verse 34. Tayorna vasam gachet. Yield not to the sway of the two, attraction and repulsion. Bhagavad Gita chapter 7 verse 14. Devi hesa gunmayi mam maya duratya. Maya, Prakriti, issuing from me and composed of gunas, is hard to transcend, but they transcend her who surrender themselves to me. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 63. Vimarsyete deshene yathechasi yatha kruhu. Think on all this and act as you choose. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66. Sarv dharman pritajya mamekam saranam varja. Give up all other dharma, seek refuge in me alone. I will save you from all sin, grieve not. One should ceaselessly curb desire, confine oneself to unavoidable acts, and do these without attachment to their fruit, and the best practical steps to secure non-attachments are: number 1, to turn one's love from worldly objects on to God. Second, to surrender every object one has and even oneself to Him. And third, to maintain this spirit of love, surrender and detachment throughout, that is, alike before and at the time of doing what one has to do and of reaping its fruit. With increasing success in such endeavor, one rises to one's fullest stature in God. Karma marga, or path of works. What are the acts generally performed for this purpose? That is, to attain the highest. They are: number 1, worship with the body termed puja, consisting of ceremonial worship accompanied by external activities. Second, worship with the voice termed japa, consisting of praise or repetition of the holy name. And third, worship with the mind termed dhyana. External and internal elements are found in all these in varying degrees. This classification based thereon, though a rough one, is still popular, and Maharshi adopts it and makes a few remarks on each. The advance of an aspirant in inwardliness is often noticeable by his proceeding from a grosser to a finer, from a somewhat external to decidedly more internal form. The higher and keener one's spirit, the finer and simpler is his method of approach, his sadhana. In the beginning of his turn from worldliness, an worldliness, an aspirant may take to ceremonial worship, especially at holy places. The words external and internal are based on the supposition that the body is one's self and that the mind is something spatial inside the brain. Though these are unwarranted assumptions, they are of use in practice to aspirant and mystic. Like Banaras or Rameswar, and be very keen on procuring numerous accessories of worship, that is, silver images and baskets of sacred basil or bale, but later less emphasis is laid on these and more on the praise of God with thrilling hymns and songs. Later still, even these are left behind, and bare repetition of the sacred name Japa is felt to be distinctly more advantageous and efficient. Next, this also drops off, and all the aspirants' heart and soul are poured out in a purely inward flow on God, drawing him more and more into God and transforming his indirect and immediate perception into immediate intuition through meditation, dharana, concentration, dhyana, and absorption, samadhi. All this is tersely summed up by Maharshi in his remark that the order of progress is puja, japa, dhyana, which ends in samadhi. Hints on meditation. Early attempts at meditation are generally unsuccessful and result in short, broken Early attempts at meditation are generally unsuccessful and result in short, broken, uneven, and taxing spells of concentration. But with bold and unflinching perseverance, one can reach the stage where meditation will be a prolonged, continuous, even unstrained and joyous flow. In fact, it would become as natural and unperceived and respiration. Early attempts at meditation again are generally on some form of God, felt at first to be other than the meditator and far away. But with increasing intensity of devotion, the distance diminishes, and when God is literally seen everywhere and everything is seen to be but God, he is felt to be near, very near, inside oneself, and finally identical with one's self. When the idea of otherness vanishes, God personal has become impersonal. One's ego or personal self also has become impersonal, and both merge in the one, the nameless, boundless being. This truth inculcated in the schools of Advaitism or Monism is amply borne out by and realized in the actual experience of mystics. 4 stages of advanced typifying this diminution are clearly expressed in Sanskrit. Thus, first shloka, where the devotee is co-sphered with his object of worship. Second, Sammitya, where the devotee is on the threshold of divinity. Thirdly, Savrupya, where the devotee takes on more and more the form and attributes of that object. And lastly, Sayujya, where he unites with or merges in God. The four paths. As for ways and means to reach union with God or the real, there are said to be four paths styled karma, bhakti, yoga, and jnana, which may be roughly described as number one, the path of works or activity, number two, devotion, number three, of mind control and union, and fourth of inquiry, wisdom or illumination. In practicing any one of these methods, elements of the other paths are often freely mingled up. The paths coalesce, they all adopt, says Maharshi. The common formula: seek the source and rest absorbed there. The term mysticism is used in a number of senses. In this book, it is used to denote the system wherein the aspirant seeks to get and gets direct, immediate, and blissful contact with God or the real through intuition. As an example, Lord Tennyson's mystic experience may be cited. He thus described it in a letter to Mr. B.P. Blood. A kind of waking trance I have frequently had generally come upon me through repeating my own name 2 or 3 times to myself, silently, till all at once, as it were, out of the intensity of consciousness of individuality, the individuality itself seemed to dissolve and fade away into boundless being. And this, not a confused state, but the clearest of the clearest, the surest of the surest, the weirdest of the weirdest, utterly beyond words, where death was an almost laughable impossibility. The loss of personality, if so it were, seeming no extinction, but the only true life. I am ashamed of my feeble description. Have I not said the state is utterly beyond words? The path of yoga. Some observations have already been made about karma marga, or the path of works. One may next dispose of the yoga path, or at least of what is considered by some to be its chief distinguished characteristics, that the attempt to control mind through control of breath. One may ask what breath has to do with the mind, but it is the experience of many that an even breathing accompanies an even flow of thoughts. A ruffled breathing accompanies mental disturbance, and that an attempt to steady a ruffled mind by severe control and regulation of breath is successful. And the reason is not far to seek. The root of all the spiritual success is a well-developed and unified or one-pointed will. And this development or unification can be obtained by exercising the will either about respiration or about any other matter which the will can influence. In the case of concentration on respiratory control, however, there is a great advantage. Respiration, vegetative life, and thought are the outflow of one evolving life principle, and respiration is a matter of urgent importance for the continuance of life. Any checking or regulation of it must naturally draw the mind away from all matters over which It may be fretting or brooding. Whatever the explanation, there is the fact that breath control leads to mind control. But this control is only temporary. It just lulls the mind for a while but provides no permanent cure for the mind's perpetual restlessness. And until such a cure is effected, one cannot enjoy permanent peace. Brahma Sutra 1 Janmadasya Yatah, which means Brahma or God is that whence all this universe arises, in which it is supported and into which it returns. And Chandogya Upanishad chapter 3 verse 14 Tajlaniti Shantah Upasit, which means calmly worship that as the source, the stay and end of all this universe. Misconceptions and needless fears. What then is the step or expedient to be adopted? Before discussing it, one may note in passing the term employed to describe this permanent cure for restlessness. It is often described as manonasa, that is destruction of the mind and of the ego or personality, and this has created needless confusion and terror. The reader may be assured that the aspirant is not called upon to become crazy or lunatic or to commit mental or spiritual suicide, but rather to hope till hope creates from its own wreck the thing it contemplates. The extract from Lord Tennyson on a previous page will show that personality and consciousness are not lost in the process of the highest realization, but broadened, deepened, and transformed on such a gigantic scale as to produce at first a weird impression into the clear and broader life of illumination, the only true life where death is impossible. It is the restlessness and other defects and limitations of the mind that are destroyed, and not the mind itself or the person himself. Other terms employed in describing this process of realization, which might shock some, are clear references to the disappearance of God personal and of devotion to Him, and to the apparently audacious claim of the individual worshipper to be nay more, to be the impersonal Brahma, which absorbs and swallows up both the worshipper and the God he worships. There is, however, no need to be shocked. Maharshi and all mystics fully recognize that so long as the sense of duality, that is, of one's being a separate individual, is retained, one must revere and worship God, and that this worship itself is the means for attaining the greatest benefit. It is the experience of many mystics that the God personal that they worship takes them onto the impersonal Brahma, that is, to the apparent loss of the individuality of themselves and of personal God. What is true life is without personality as we know it, need not frighten or worry us, where we are still in the dualistic stages. Sufficient into the day is the work thereof. Having trusted to God and to the Guru, we are in safe hands, and if the guidance received takes us to the impersonal, we feel also fearlessness and bliss as part of that crowning achievement. That assurance that assurance is given by scripture and is confirmed by the actual experience of Maharshi and other great men of light. Spiritual guidance prepares the way to impersonal realization by gradation of steps, which makes the change almost imperceptible. That is, one is asked to worship God not as existing in a single form or body or under a single name, but in all the objects of the universe. And when reverence is transferred to the entire universe and all objects in it, one's religion becomes impersonal. Another example of the gradation of steps is furnished by the life of Swami Vivekananda, who was strongly under the influence of dualism and the need for personal God, a handbreadth off, that is distinct from himself. Still, the miraculous touch of his Guru made him realize that differences of individuality are not as certain as they first appear, and that the truth is that differences exist only to be swallowed up in a strange and mysterious manner in the one real. Vivekananda for some time clearly perceived that a cart, its horse, and driver were really one, that is, leaf plate, the food thereupon, and himself, the eater, were one, and wondered who it was that was eating. Loss of individuality, far from being a shock to devotees, is by no means an uncommon experience among them. Many lose themselves daily in their meditation on God. A gopi's intense love carried her as Sri Krishna Chaitanya's carried his devotion to the point of identification of the self with Sri Krishna God. This is neither shocking nor irreligious, but the height of devotion, and hence the loss of oneself in the impersonal is justly described by Maharshi as the perfection of devotion. So I end the video here and continue in the next video. Thank you for watching this video with patience. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thank you, my dear friends. Namaskar. Namaskar.